the truth in his eyes. Celeste Harper was a woman of facts. A journalist for over a decade, she had earned her reputation by digging through the murky waters of politics, crime, and corruption, bringing the truth to light. Her articles were known for their meticulous research, razor-sharp analysis, and complete lack of sentimentality. In a world where fake news ran rampant and emotion often clouded judgment, Celeste had one rule: the truth was all that mattered. Her small office in the heart of the city was a reflection of her no-nonsense approach to life. Neat, organized, and filled with stacks of research notes and case files, it was a place where only facts could survive. The clutter of personal belongings was minimal. A photo of her late mother in the corner, a potted plant on the windowsill, and a small collection of vintage typewriters, a remnant of the journalism world she admired. Despite her success, Celeste's personal life was anything but fulfilling. The men she had dated were often as superficial as the stories she uncovered, the ones who pretended to listen but couldn't get past their own egos. She had no room for romance, no time for fantasy. Her job, her pursuit of truth, was all she needed. She believed love was nothing more than a distraction, an illusion that masked the harsh realities of life. It was during a routine assignment that Celeste's world began to shift. She was assigned to cover a high-profile case involving a powerful CEO, Alexander Kane, a man whose wealth and influence were as vast as his reputation for being ruthless. Celeste had read about him countless times, his name linked to corporate scandals and accusations of shady dealings. He was everything she despised, an embodiment of privilege, power, and control. But when she met him face to face, something unexpected happened. Alexander was not what she had imagined. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with deep-set eyes that seemed to hold a depth of experience that went beyond the corporate world. His presence was magnetic, an aura of quiet confidence that commanded attention. His face was weathered but handsome, with the faintest hint of weariness that betrayed the decades of power and responsibility he had shouldered. He had the kind of smile that could light up a room, but his eyes, those piercing, almost impossibly blue eyes, held a sadness that tugged at something inside Celeste. The interview started like any other. She asked him the usual questions, probing into his business practices, his stance on the case, and his history. He answered with the polished precision of a man used to being in control, but there was a sincerity in his voice, an honesty that Celeste wasn't prepared for. "I know what you're thinking," he said, leaning forward slightly as if to make sure she understood. "You think I'm just another corporate shark, another villain in a suit. But there's more to me than what you see on paper. You just need to look past the headlines." Celeste scoffed, thinking he was just another master of manipulation, a man who used his charm and wealth to spin a narrative. But the more she listened, the more she was pulled in. His words had weight, a heaviness that spoke to a man who had lived through loss and sacrifice. There was a vulnerability in his eyes, a flicker of something real beneath the surface. And for the first time in years, Celeste felt herself questioning her own beliefs. Could it be possible that this man, this powerful figure who had lived a life she could never fathom, was more than just the sum of his actions? Was there truth in his eyes that she wasn't willing to see? Over the next few weeks, Celeste found herself revisiting the interview, replaying his words in her mind. She had spent years writing about people like him, dissecting their motives, exposing their lies. But Alexander Kane was different. He was enigmatic, layered, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she wanted to know more. Their professional relationship turned into something else, an unspoken understanding that hovered just beneath the surface of their conversations. What started as casual meetings for the article became longer discussions over dinner, brief encounters at his office, and exchanges of thoughts and ideas that went far beyond business. She was still skeptical, still clinging to the idea that love was a distraction. But Alexander made her question that belief. He was no longer just a story to write, no longer just a puzzle to be solved. He became a part of her life, someone who was starting to occupy space in her heart. And as much as Celeste hated to admit it, She found herself drawn to him in a way that she couldn't ignore. But there was one thing that still held her back: the truth. She had built her career on exposing lies, on finding the truth in a world full of deception. Could she trust him? Could she believe in the words he had said to her? Or was he simply playing her as he had played so many others before? One evening, after a particularly intense discussion about his case, Celeste couldn't help herself. She asked him the question that had been haunting her. "Why me, Alexander?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why have you let me into your world? You know who I am, what I do. You've seen how I dissect people, how I search for the truth in their lies. You know I'll never just take things at face value." He was silent for a moment, his eyes not leaving hers. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but there was a vulnerability in it that cut through her defenses. "Because, Celeste," he said softly, "I've never met anyone who sees through the surface the way you do. I've spent my life hiding behind a mask, playing a role I thought I had to. But with you, I don't have to pretend. You see me for who I really am." His words struck her like a blow, and for the first time in her life, Celeste felt something shift inside her. She had always believed that love was an illusion, a distraction that only led to heartache. But in that moment, she realized that the truth she had been searching for had always been right in front of her. It wasn't in the facts and the headlines. It was in the connection they shared, in the vulnerability they had both exposed. Celeste's relationship with Alexander deepened, and with it, her understanding of herself. She had spent so many years buried in her work, so focused on the cold, hard facts, that she had forgotten the warmth of human connection, the importance of trust, and the power of love. With Alexander, she found herself letting go of the walls she had built around her heart, embracing a love that was as real as the stories she had spent her career uncovering. But as with all love stories, there were complications. The case against Alexander's company became more intense, and the closer Celeste got to the truth, the more dangerous things became. There were moments of doubt, moments where she wondered if her feelings for him were clouding her judgment. And then, the unthinkable happened. One evening, as Celeste was preparing to meet Alexander for dinner, she received a phone call. It was an anonymous tip about a major cover-up involving his company. The facts were undeniable, the evidence irrefutable. Alexander had been hiding something that could destroy him. Her heart sank as she realized the man she had come to love was not the perfect figure she had hoped for. He had been hiding the truth from her all along. When Celeste confronted him, Alexander didn't deny it. He told her everything: the secrets, the lies, the choices he had made. And for the first time in her life, Celeste understood that the truth wasn't always black and white. People made mistakes. They acted out of fear, out of desperation, and sometimes love was the only thing that could help them find redemption. But as much as she wanted to forgive him, the weight of his actions was too much to bear. The truth in his eyes was no longer enough to erase the damage that had been done. With a heavy heart, Celeste walked away from him, realizing that love, for all its beauty, was not always enough to overcome the truths that lay buried beneath the surface.